Insectid. Dethrone the Mantis. Written and narrated by Kentaro Smith. Chapter 2. Who do you want to save? The Civil Guard's local post in the Market District was a large building when compared with the surrounding structures. While it couldn't be mistaken as a fortress, it certainly carried the air of military power. The boxy structure was made from thick stone, with iron bars serving as windows in each wall. 2 guards armed with one-handed swords stood beside the front entrance. While on duty, each civil guard wore leather armor underneath several plates of iron armor. Shoulder pieces, shin plates, a breastplate, and a backplate served to protect the body, while an open-faced helmet protected their head. If the training regiment the public guards went through each day wasn't public knowledge, even a petty thug might have seen the light armor as a blatant weakness worth risking crimes for. The true strength of the guards, though, was frequently demonstrated. Rowdy drunks or incompetent foreigners were dealt with in seconds if a guard was present, minutes if someone called for them. Not only were the guards trained in boxing, but each guard mastered at least 2 weapons. The 2 most popular weapons being a baton for non-lethal combat and a one-handed sword for more dangerous encounters. Every day, guards were subjected to an hour-long run or 2 hours of combat sparring. The sparring sessions were never against their peers, though. These training exercises were against the Empire's military, making the shield of the people sharper than daggers. Having known this, Hannah found it strange how tense the civil guards were in their own post. Hannah had been held at the civil guard post since the previous night, the guards assuring her they would be questioning her in the morning. The dorm room assigned to Hannah could be described as a single-room apartment or a generous prison cell depending on one's perspective. There was a twin-sized bed in one corner, a dining table with 3 chairs at the foot of the bed, and a bathroom hidden behind a nearly opaque curtain. The bathroom itself had a sink over the toilet and a tub for a bath. That night, the guards were confused by the horror show she had survived, but maintained an air of confidence and professionalism. While the guard that collected her showed a human personality, the others were cold and moved on commands from their superiors with inhuman precision. Now, she was shocked to see many of the guards sweating over pale faces. It was as if a dragon had taken refuge within their fortress. "Excuse me," Hannah called through her dorm's door. Officer Rachel, the guard that took Hannah from the orphanage, stopped on her way down the hall and turned, her lips artificially curved in a failed attempt at a proud smile. "Good morning, Hannah," the officer greeted, her voice replicating joy like a child drawing a sunset. "How are you feeling?" Hannah hesitated for a moment, but answered, "I'm okay." "What's going on? Everyone seems nervous." "It's nothing you need to worry about. Just some office work we weren't expecting is all." Rachel's eyes scanned the room like prey before she took a step closer, lowering her voice to a soft whisper. "Are you hungry? Perhaps you'd like something sweet." "Yes, please." "There's a cafe nearby. I can go there and—" "Flower Cafe is closed for the weekend." Rachel's eyes widened. "The weekend?" Hannah nodded slowly. "I work there. Mr. Williams said he was planning to sleep." "Through the weekend?" "Officer Rachel." A deep voice shook the hall, causing every guard to stand up stiff and turn to the source. Hannah couldn't see far enough down the hall, but the heavy footsteps and clapping armor plates told her it wouldn't be long before she could. "Yes, ma'am," Rachel shouted, her eyes practically drowning in anxiety. "Have you questioned our witness yet?" the voice asked with a commanding tone. No, she just woke up, ma'am." "Where is she?" Rachel's eyes didn't move as she answered. "Behind this door, ma'am." The heavy footsteps stopped in front of Hannah's door as an oppressive shadow washed over her. A vaguely feminine-shaped body towered over the door's window, covered head to toe in rounded armor plates. A single line of shadow allowed piercing blue eyes to peer down at the young girl, causing her to stumble back in her dorm. "Have you eaten yet?" the armored woman asked in a deep yet polite tone. When Hannah shook her head, the woman turned to Rachel and barked out a set of orders. "Officer Rachel, get Lieutenant Justin. The two of you will get this young girl breakfast sweets and sweet coffee. You have 10 minutes. Ma'am, if I may. Time is ticking, officer. If 10 minutes is too much time, I'll give you 5. 10 is enough, Rachel blurted. She saluted and sprinted down the hallway. The armored woman turned back to Hannah with a heavy sigh, her voice returning to the polite mask she had donned earlier. We'll need to ask you about last night. Would it be okay if we entered, or would you rather talk elsewhere? Here is fine, Hannah said. Excuse us then. The door's lock clicked and swung open. As the tall woman entered, a smaller woman wearing the same armor trailed behind her. While the taller woman held her shoulders back, the smaller woman seemed to pull them in, keeping her hands together in front of herself. The smaller woman appeared to be struggling under the weight of her armor, which would be strange regardless of the circumstance, since the armor clearly reflected her status as one of the Empire's knights. Knights in the Bastion Empire were seen as the strongest warriors. Some rumors proposed a single knight was worth 10 soldiers. While their training was a secret, their capabilities were not. Every year, the Empire hosted a gladiator tournament where the winner got to fight a knight. No matter what district held the event, no matter how strong the gladiator champions were, they were easily felled by the Empire's knights. To see one so visibly struggle with their armor could only be explained by being newly knighted or being an imposter, neither of which Hannah was willing to accuse the woman of. The two knights took a seat at the dining table. After a moment's hesitation, Hannah joined them. Forgive my earlier behavior, the taller knightess said. I've been given command of your case, and I don't want the civil guards to treat it with the same pace as the disappearances. Hannah's eyes dropped to the table as her fingers squeezed her pants. I didn't know there was a knightess at the civil guard. This is a temporary assignment, the knightess admitted. The royal family recognized your case as special and sent me to help. Special? Hannah gasped in disbelief. I'm just an orphan. No, you're not. The voice of the smaller woman was shockingly young, but carried the warmth of a motherly presence. Everyone in the Bastion Empire is precious. It is because of your caretaker and your recent job hunting that you've been recognized as more than another face to protect. Hannah's mind was racing. How much did they know about her? You seem tense, the taller knightess noted. How about we introduce ourselves? The two knights took off their helmets, revealing two faces as opposite as the sun and the moon. I'm Knightess Katherine, the taller woman greeted. Her focused blue eyes were powerful enough to distract from the ash-blonde hair that hid her ears. Her face was unmistakably feminine, but the masculine features that decorated her jaw and cheeks hinted at the knightess's training. I'm Knightess Jewel, the smaller woman greeted, raising two fingers to her shining blue eye. Her polished blonde hair rolled down to her thin shoulders. Had Hannah been told the knightess was a descendant of royalty, she would have believed it. I'm Hannah, Hannah stuttered, lifting her head slightly. Katherine set her helmet on the table and looked into Hannah's eyes. I'm going to start asking you some questions, but if you feel too uncomfortable to answer, just raise your hand and we'll move on. Just remember that any information you give us will help us perform the investigation, okay? Hannah nodded, and Katherine asked the first question. Do you know who the monster was last night? Hannah's eyes sunk down to the table. Which one? While the knightess's face wasn't visible to Hannah, she could see Katherine's hands curl into fists at the question. The one that burned down the orphanage, each word being stopped for clearance before delivery. It was Miss Elizabeth. I saw her body fall out of the statue. A small hand made of clouds placed itself on the girl's hand. Jewel's voice shed her hand's gentleness. She meant a lot to you, didn't she? A blur formed at the edges of Hannah's vision, slowly crawling toward the center. She raised me, Hannah said through pained sobs. I loved her. A second hand pulled Hannah's pair up, raising her gaze to meet Jewel's passionate one. Keep those feelings for her. She's still in your heart. But the young knightess stumbled out of her chair and pulled Hannah into an uncomfortable hug. We'll get to the bottom of this. You have my word. Stay strong. Your memory will help us catch who did this. Hannah spent a minute pulling her emotions back to center. The recent insect statue cases were being investigated by the civil guards. These knights recognized her case as unique and were relying on her to offer information to save people from being a victim like herself. At 17 years old, Hannah was practically an adult. Adults like Miss Elizabeth didn't act selfishly or deny opportunities to help others. If she wanted to be the kind of woman Miss Elizabeth was, she needed to mature and do whatever she could to help solve the insect murders. She wiped her tears, pulled herself away from the Knightess, and offered her first piece of information. Miss Elizabeth was the fire insect, but I saw her kill her. A green praying mantis killed her. After Hannah finished offering her testimony, Katherine and Julia headed back for their shared office. On their way out, they instructed Lieutenant Rachel to escort the young girl home after she ate. The 3-minute walk from the witness holding center to their office was traversed in silence. For Katherine, the horrors Hannah shared occupied her mind. The young girl lost everything in such a horrific fashion, with no available explanation to ease her suffering. It was an all too familiar story to the Knightess. Hannah would need to figure out where she was going to live, and how to live after this tragedy. Not even the ashes of her previous life were salvageable, and only a single stranger could be called family. Any dreams the young girl might have had were now impossibilities, and an uncomfortable choice had presented itself to her. Would she find a way forward through her anger, or build a new life from nothing? Katherine's eyes drifted to the sword on her hip. She knew her answer to that question. Kathy? Julia's voice pulled Katherine back to reality. They were now in their cramped office. Julia was giving Katherine a worried look from behind the desk. Are you okay? I'm fine, Katherine hurriedly replied, her answer coming out as a gasp. As the words left her mouth, she cursed herself for not keeping her emotions in check. I'm fine, she repeated. I'll get the report started shortly. We need her testimony documented so we can compare them to the other cases. Julia's concerned expression held. You see yourself in her, don't you? Katherine shook her head. I said I'm fine. What did you think of her testimony? Do you think that mantis can be trusted? The princess's eyes were tempted to dig deeper into the Knightess, but a sigh dissuaded her from prodding any further. I read through the case files properly on the carriage. The few witness testimonies that mention the mantis always catch him fleeing the scene. He's definitely involved. I'm just not sure how. The way Hannah described the killing blow is also strange. It seems too fantastical to be true, though it would explain the statues. Katherine rubbed her chin for a moment. Did we get an autopsy report on the victim? Not yet. Julia crossed her arms and frowned. Isaac said most of the victims were Bastions, right? Wasn't Elizabeth an Arrow native? Katherine nodded slowly. I guess the Insectid phenomena is unrelated to civilian origin, then. If our target is switching back to random victims, we'll be completely out of luck on figuring out his MO. Julia lifted her helmet over her head. No use theorizing over nothing. I'm going to patrol the area. Katherine took a step toward the door. I'll come with you. A hand grabbed Katherine by the wrist. When the Knightess turned around, she saw Julia's carefree smile and excited eyes. You have a report to write. Just let me play my Knightess role for today. Princess, I cannot just... Knightess, Julia corrected. You trained me in combat. Do you think I can't handle myself out there? We're dealing with monsters, Princess. I can't let you go off on your own. Monsters that haven't made a public appearance until last night. No telling if they'll do that again. Besides, if I don't think I can handle it, I'll just run away. There are plenty of civil guards here to help if I need it. Katherine's heart was drumming dangerously close to her throat. If anything were to happen to you... It won't. This isn't a game, Your Highness. I know. You can't afford to play a hero, Julia. I'm serious. Julia stepped past Katherine with a pat on her shoulder. I'm not a weak little girl anymore, Kathy. You made sure of that, right? Do you not trust your own training? The Knightess desperately wanted to counter any of Julia's points, but she didn't know how to. While it was true that the princess had sword training, she never fought in a real battle, let alone a long sparring session. Katherine couldn't deny that the woman was smart, though. She knew better than anyone that Julia wouldn't put herself in a losing scenario without reason. Katherine's shoulders slumped in defeat with a heavy sigh. "Be safe out there." Julia offered a smile as wide as the horizon as she opened the office door. William's eyes wouldn't open when his mind swam to the surface of consciousness. He wasn't sure how long he had been asleep, but he was confident it wasn't enough. As he forced his body of bricks to sit upright, he recognized why he had woken up from his sleep. A loud set of knocks were sounding off at his front door, a voice occasionally shouting something incoherent in between the knocks. After pressing his fingers against his eyelids, he wandered out of his bedroom and down to the front door. William's house was more of an apartment built on top of Flower Cafe. The second floor contained a bathroom, bedroom, and kitchen. All had the minimal necessities to function within the cramped spaces. A set of wooden stairs rolled down behind the shop's kitchen to lead to a door. In William's groggy mind, it was a front door, but most businesses would consider it an employee entrance. When his thin hands opened the front door, William was surprised to see a civil guard standing beside Hannah. Dark circles sagged under bloodshot eyes that saw something beyond the building's walls. Her ash-blonde hair had burned ends and had seemingly survived a hurricane. She wore a simple gray sweater and matching cotton pants. William recognized these as clothes given to overnight visitors of the Civil Guard headquarters. "Good evening, Officer Rachel," William greeted through a heavy yawn. "Good morning, William," the officer responded. "I have a huge favor to ask." William's eyes drifted to Hannah. "What happened?" "The orphanage burned down last night. She was the only survivor. We've started our investigation, but can't keep her at headquarters. Can you take her in for now?" The snail powering William's mind attempted to consider the proposal, but it gave up as quickly as it started. "Sure. I'll make some room for her." "Thank you. She said she started working here recently and that you were the only other person she knew well. She had some breakfast, but I don't think it was enough." Rachel turned to Hannah and put her hands on the girl's shoulders. "If you ever need anything at all, just give my name to the civil guards, even if it's just someone to talk to, okay?" Hannah nodded, but her gaze remained distant. After saying their goodbyes, William guided Hannah to the dining area of Flower Cafe and silently started brewing coffee. While the shop floor was open for seating, the windows were covered in wooden blinds. To prepare for the weekend, William had locked the front door and placed a closed sign outside. This was done to keep people out while he slept the weekend off, but now it served as a privacy screen for Hannah and himself. The room's atmosphere was cold with the natural light of the sun blocked out. The dim candlelights William set up at the cafe counter and dining table offered little warmth. As he worked, William occasionally glanced over at his employee, but no look offered a unique view of her. Hannah's desperate but positive attitude was gone. In its place was a sense of aimlessness. Her eyes were distant, but her body was anxious. Her arms pressed against her torso, hands pulling into her stomach, and her legs left no opening between them. While some would see Hannah for the traumatized girl she was, William saw a girl trapped in a blizzard, far from home, with no sense of where salvation could be found. After a few minutes, William placed a cup of hot coffee in front of Hannah. He placed his own cup on the other side of the table and sat down. He didn't say a word or even attempt to meet her gaze. Instead, he lifted the cup to his lips and quietly sipped at the pitch-black liquid steaming inside. Seconds of silence dragged into minutes. The two silently drank 4 cups of coffee together, the lack of natural light hiding the true passage of time spent with nothing but caffeine. While he wasn't sure how Hannah felt, William was comfortable with the silence. Having run the shop himself for several years, he had days where he sat in his room by himself, drinking coffee. Sometimes it was paired with a book borrowed from the library. Sometimes his thoughts were the sweetener to his time. Despite functionally doing nothing different from the latter, though, having someone else in the room completely changed how it felt to sit in silence. Sitting alone made William feel calm and meditative. allowing him to really reflect on each thought that crossed his mind. With one other person in the room, there was a strange sensation that he couldn't quite put a word to. As his cup of coffee poured heat through his body, he felt the atmosphere of the room warm up with him. It reminded him of being alone in the local church, the presence of his God in the back of his mind, but without the omniscient power behind that presence. It was a strange sensation, but it was a pleasant one. "Miss Elizabeth died last night," Hannah said. Her words broke the silence, and the room's cold atmosphere swiftly returned. "She became something the civil guards called an insectid." Silence returned momentarily before Hannah's growing voice started ripping it apart. "I watched her burn down the orphanage. I saw the bodies of the children she killed, the caretaker she killed. She even tried to kill me. I didn't recognize her. She didn't recognize me. An insectid that looked like a mantis showed up and saved me. It then killed her. It fought her so effortlessly, and then it just killed her. If it was so easy to fight her, why didn't he save her? If that insectid can be sane, why couldn't it help Miss Elizabeth?" At the final question, Hannah threw her arms to the side, shattering her mug against the shop floor with a deafening crash. For a minute, Hannah's angry, heavy breathing kept the silence at bay. The once distant eyes had become focused and furious. William finished his coffee and rose from his seat. "Do you hate this mantis?" The fire in Hannah's eyes dimmed slightly as her body slowly pulled itself together again. "I don't know." The man nodded and walked behind the cafe's counter, retrieving a broom and dustpan. "Do you hate what Miss Elizabeth became?" "I don't know." Hannah buried her head in her arms, laying them out on the dining table. "I'm sorry." William wordlessly swept up the shards of the coffee mug and dumped them into a bin. He washed his hands in the sink and dried them with a nearby hand towel. "Do you know what you want to do next?" Hannah didn't respond for a moment, but her voice eventually emerged through her sleeve. "I want to stop others from becoming like me." "What does that mean?" "I don't want people to lose someone because of the Insectids." "How will you do that?" "I'll help the Civil Guard." "How?" "I don't know. I told them everything I saw, and they told me to lie low for a while. I barely passed the Empire's physical fitness test last year, so I can't fight." "Why not?" "I'm not strong enough." "Do you want to be strong enough?" A defeated sigh oozed out of Hannah's throat. "I don't know. I was too scared to move when the Insectids attacked last night. Even if I had the strength, I don't think I have the courage." William nodded to himself. "What if you could help the people who became victims?" Hannah twitched, but her head remained glued to the table. "Would that even be helpful? If they're already victims, it's too late to help them." "Don't you want help right now?" Hannah lifted her head, but William continued, not allowing a response. "I once saw a girl lose everything and fight to avenge it. When the fight was over, she could have been like you, trapped in an empty room with nothing but her emotions. Instead, she found someone to help. They had also lost everything. Together, they picked each other up whenever they felt down and celebrated each other's victories. They then went on to share that help with others in their own way. Those who have lost everything in the present haven't lost everything in the future. So let me ask again. Do you know what you want to do?" Hannah kept her eyes on William with a mixture of emotions that shifted like the tides in the ocean. The cafe owner waited patiently until the girl opened her mouth with a response. I want to help everyone. When Princess Julia originally pitched her plan to Katherine, the Knightess saw it as tremendously naive and dangerous. Infiltrating the civil guard so that a member of the royal family could better support the Insectid cases put Julia at immense risk. If her cover was ever blown, the Insectids could potentially target her, or use her against the rest of the royal family. Unfortunately for the Knightess, the princess was now out on the streets, alone. Should anyone correctly identify her, Katherine wouldn't be nearby to help her. As Katherine wrote her report on Hannah's testimony, every footstep in the hallway became a taunt to her senses. It could have been someone simply passing by, or someone approaching to question Knightess Jewel's rank. This made the strange knock on the office door send the Knightess into action. A hand gripped the hilt of her sword as Katherine rose from her seat. "Who is it?" A proud, masculine voice answered from behind the door. "Private First Class Gerald. If you could spare me a minute." Katherine approached the door slowly and opened it. PFC Gerald was a muscular man, even by the standards of the Bastion Empire. His shoulders were nearly as wide as her office door, and his limbs could have been mistaken for oversized wooden bats. The armor on his body matched the designs of the local civil guards, but they were severely undersized. He had the typical traits of a member of the original Bastion army: black hair, brown eyes, and lightly browned skin. What stood out, aside from his monstrous body, was his hair's buzz cut and a scar poking out from under his armor, tapping the base of his neck. "What do you need, Private?" Katherine asked, her tone sharp like daggers. The man offered a half-assed salute. It was as he spoke that Katherine realized that his voice carried a more convincing display of confidence than his fake grin. "I'm new here. Just transferred from the manufacturing district this morning. I was told to report to you if I had any needs." Katherine didn't like this man. He was blatantly hiding something from her, and his casual nature showed complete disregard for rank. Whatever convinced him he should have that confidence wasn't Katherine's business, but she didn't want to deal with him for long. "Are any of your needs beyond what your peers could provide for you?" Katherine asked. "If it is in regards to your armor, I'd recommend getting in touch with Captain Nathan. He is the actual head of the civil guard post here. I'm here on a temporary basis." Gerald chuckled as he lowered his salute. "I was told by my captain that I am to assist in the Insectid case, specifically in the search for the rumored Mantis Insectid." Katherine frowned. "Your captain has no jurisdiction here. If you transfer here, you are to follow orders given here." The man's eyes started leaking anxiety. "I assure you, our goals are the same." "They're clearly not if you're willing to disregard authority here." Desperation spilled into his eyes. "Can you at least provide me with the information from the case file? I'd like to get caught up on what we've uncovered before taking on my official duties." Katherine stepped up to the man, craning her neck back to glare at him. "Perhaps I will, if you tell me what you're really doing here. I don't like many things, but being lied to because you think I'm stupid is on top of that list. If you cannot be honest with me, then why should I trust you with the case file?" Gerald's mask of bravado slipped off his voice as his speech's pace accelerated. "My search for the Mantis is of utmost importance, Katherine. I don't need an arrow child getting in my way." "Knightess Katherine." The Knightess quickly drew her sword and pointed its edge at the man's throat. He took a step back as his expression melted into sudden horror. "Decree 15 of King Russell's Bastion. Disrespect toward a servant of the Empire is deserving of death. Should that disrespect come from another servant, may their blood be sprayed across every surface in their immediate vicinity. Just to make sure I won't be cleaning my sword of your filth tonight, Gerald. Are you disrespecting me?" Gerald's emotions spilled over a collapsed dam as his body performed nearly every apologetic gesture under the sun. "No, Knightess, forgive my intrusion. I will report to Captain Nathan for my orders now. Thank you." Katherine nodded and sheathed her sword. Should you have no other reason to waste my time then, I shall return to my duties as well. You're dismissed." As Katherine turned back to her office, she saw Gerald take a turn at the end of the hallway. Either he didn't recognize the captain's office directly next to hers, or he was about to take matters into his own hands. Katherine dismissed the man from her mind and returned to her work. He likely wouldn't pose a problem either way. Princess Julia, or rather Knightess Jewel, was patrolling the blocks surrounding the civil guard post when she ran into Officer Rachel and a man in a matching uniform. The former Julia recognized from when she visited Hannah's dorm earlier that morning. The latter, though, she wasn't sure about. Despite her unfamiliarity with the pair, she called out to them from across the street and jogged over. The two were standing in front of what appeared to be a coffee shop called Flower Cafe. The building itself was a slim 2-story building with tall glass windows on the first level. Unfortunately, she couldn't get a grasp on what kind of coffee shop it was because of the curtains blocking the outside world. Julia had read romance novels that took place in coffee shops, but nothing more than that. It wasn't a curiosity dying to be satiated, but she still imagined what it was like to be in one from time to time. The man accompanying Officer Rachel was blonde with crystal blue eyes. While his hair was partially obscured by his civil guard helmet, the playful energy in his eyes were on full display. To Julia, he seemed like a child stuck in a man's body, though she knew better than to judge based on appearances. This was going to be the opportunity to find out for sure. "Officer Rachel," Julia greeted as she crossed the street. The two raised a salute, and Officer Rachel responded with a cold professional tone. "Knightess Jewel!" Julia tried to hide a giggle behind her hand, but it slipped in with her words. "No need for that around me. Sorry if Kathy scared you earlier." "Kathy?" the man asked. "Yeah, you know. Tall Knightess, scary voice around her peers, polite voice around civilians." Officer Rachel shot the man next to her a look before turning an apologetic one to Julia. "Knightess, please refrain from using personal nicknames with us. Last thing we want is to be disciplined for disregarding rank." Julia put her hand on her thoughtful chin for a moment, then closed her eyes as she struggled to recite something. "Decree 25 of King Russell's Bastion. Should a superior permit casual behavior... something. One must engage with other superiors for permission or something. Should a superior permit casual behavior around their presence, one must engage with other superiors for permission should they also be present." The man's recital sounded practiced, but a tone of confusion still shadowed his words. "Yeah, that one. Didn't think I'd ever have to recite that one again." The man's expression seemed doubtful. "There aren't that many decrees." "I know, but if you follow the rules already, remembering their exact wording can be hard." Officer Rachel cleared her throat as the pair dropped their salute. "Did you have need of us, Knightess?" "Not really." Julia lifted the visor on her helmet, revealing her face. "I just saw you two out here and wanted to make sure you were doing okay. Kathy can be a bit thorny when she's in work mode." "Work mode," the man repeated. Rachel's eyes filled with panic, and she gestured to the man. "This is Lieutenant Justin. He's a relative newbie with us, so please forgive him if he comes across as dim for his rank." "That's hurtful," Justin admonished. Another giggle slipped from Julia's control. "You two can be casual with me. Trust me, I'd appreciate it over the strictly professional attitude Kathy wants from you guys." Justin smiled and offered a salute. "Consider it done, ma'am." "Jewel," Julia corrected. Justin let out a chuckle. "All right, Jewel." Rachel's body was being squeezed by an invisible vice. "Knightess Jewel." "Jewel," Julia corrected playfully. "Knightess." "Jewel," Justin corrected as he jumped next to Julia. Rachel's face blossomed like a vibrant rose. "Knightess Jewel." "Jewel," Justin and Julia sang together. Rachel let out a sigh and her body relaxed in defeat. Lady Jewel? Justin and Julia glanced at each other in confusion. Then they shrugged and said in unison, Close enough. Lady Jewel, Rachel repeated, as she regained her composure. I'd like to apologize if I failed to be as casual as you're requesting. If you can't do it, I'll try not to force you into it, Julia said with a warm smile. I'm just looking to get along with everyone while I'm here. On that note, I saw you two standing in front of this shop. Is there something special about this place? Justin rejoined his place next to Rachel as he answered. We just got done dropping our witness off here. Apparently Hannah started working here recently. At her age, I'm impressed. I didn't even want to think about work when I was her age. Lieutenant Justin nodded. We didn't get to talk to her much, but we know the owner here personally. He's a strangely quiet guy, but he makes the best coffee in the area. Officer Rachel nodded her agreement, but her discomfort was still apparent. I don't know how well he'll take care of her considering he's been running the shop alone for so long. Hannah said the shop was closed for the weekend, so I plan on checking in on her when Monday rolls around. Mind if I come with you? Julia asked. The way Hannah talked about the orphanage fire was detailed. I just want to make sure she's doing okay as well. Justin shrugged. If she's going with you, mind if I stay at the post that day, Rachel? The other guys tend to let things get messy when they're not being told to clean. Rachel shot the man a disdained look, but let out another sigh. Sure. She then turned to Julia. If you could stop by my office early Monday morning, we can go together. Julia nodded. Thanks, Rachel. Her eyes drifted to the Flower Cafe. I'd also like to check out this place's coffee. If Justin's word is anything to go by, sounds like I'd be in for a treat. No! The trio turned and found a large man dressed in the armor of the Civil Guard. He would have easily towered over them all if he hadn't been hunched over, his eyes crazed and darting between each member of the group. Julia didn't recognize the man and turned to her peers for confirmation. They also didn't seem to recognize the monstrous man. When Julia turned back to face him, she saw some kind of hunger in his eyes directed at the business. His body was trembling with anticipation for something. He is mine, not yours, mine! Officer Rachel drew her two-handed sword and took up a defensive stance. State your rank and post. The man's eyes locked onto Rachel, and the grin of a predator crossed his expression. I was Private First Class Gerald, but I'm not anymore. Lieutenant Justin reached for his sword, but was stopped when Gerald's hand lifted him by his face. The man's laugh was a scholar's deranged illusions brought to life. I hear them. I know you can't, but they're coming. I'll be champion. Not you. Not you! Julia reached a hand out to stop the giant, but it was futile. Justin was thrust into the ground with enough force to crack the stone walkway. Nearby civilians let out a scream in horror after witnessing the violent act. The disguised princess took a glance at her surroundings. There were 13 civilians in her line of sight, all of which had body types that didn't exceed the Empire's minimum fitness threshold. They could not hold their own against the PFC. Knightess, Rachel said with a voice of trained focus. Your orders. Julia watched Gerald stand back upright, leaving an unconscious Justin lying on the floor. She drew her own one-handed sword and pointed it at the fake civil guard. Evacuate the citizens here. I'll take on Gerald. But Knightess, the officer started. Decree 1 of King Russell's Bastion. The people are weapons for the Empire to fight the enemy with. Thus, the Empire must keep the people polished, cleaned, and protected when sheathed. Julia pulled down the visor on her helmet, and without taking her gaze off of Gerald, jerked a thumb to her chest. As long as I am a servant of the Empire, I will protect its people. Gerald roared with another sinister laugh. Not here for you, but you seem Fun. As Rachel sheathed her sword and ran toward the nearest civilians, Julia watched as the man's body started to change. A wave of black liquid spewed from Gerald's mouth and consumed his body, sticking to his silhouette like an unnatural cloth. Red lines appeared over his body, solidifying into panels of armor. When compared to her own, Gerald's armor was much thicker. The plates covered large portions of his body and had wider gaps between them. In his left hand, a tower shield that was 5 feet tall and 2 feet wide cast a shadow over Julia. In the other hand was a sword with a flat end, the sides thick and dull. The most striking piece of Gerald's equipment, though, was the helmet. A black visor hid his eyes while a large horn stood vertically from his forehead. The red helmet had layers of metal plates that protected the sides and back of his head. It was unlike anything the princess had seen among the Empire's forces. Julia's heart was pounding in her ears, pumping adrenaline through her body as she watched the Insectid finish his transformation. As the beetle Insectid let out a battle cry, a single thought crossed through the princess's mind. "I'm sorry, Kathy." As Hannah finished her last cup of coffee, she felt her body growing groggy. She attributed it to her emotional breakdowns throughout the day. Having won with the 2 Knightesses was exhausting enough, but she even let it all out on William unprompted. The day and the previous night had taken a toll on her, and all she wanted to do was lie down and rest. Even the friendly chatter she faintly heard outside was tuning in and out as she struggled to keep her eyes open. "Hannah?" William called from the cafe's counter. "Why don't you head upstairs and get some rest?" Hannah turned her gaze to her new guardian and was immediately struck with unease. The monotone man, disinterested in the world around him, was gone. In his place was someone with a focused gaze and a voice that carried determination and anxiety about some unknown force. Even his movements lacked the will of the lazy puppeteer Hannah had imagined. As William left from behind the counter, his legs stepped confidently and his body was clearly within his full control. "What's wrong?" Hannah asked warily. "I just remembered some errands I forgot to tend to last night, and they're time sensitive," William replied quickly, his voice carrying concern. "I'll lock up the shop, so head upstairs and stay put until I come back. We're closed, so don't let anyone in." William grabbed her arm and lifted her to her feet gently. Hannah pulled herself away and took a step back. "Mr. William, what's wrong?" "I just told you," William said. Hannah caught his gaze dart to the left as he spoke. "I've got an urgent errand to run to. Please head upstairs and get some rest." Before Hannah could protest any further, a loud crash sounded just outside the cafe's windows. Muffled screams sounded shortly after. When Hannah turned to William, his eyes had narrowed like a wolf who had caught a trespasser in his territory. "Mr. William?" Hannah said, her voice shaking. William's icy voice uttered his response slowly and deliberately. "Stay inside. Do not leave the shop." William turned but was stopped when Hannah grabbed onto his arm. "What's going on? Why are you so serious all of a sudden?" "Hannah, we don't have time. Let go and stay put." "Mr. William!" Another heavy crash sounded outside the window, this time with the sound of small metal pieces bouncing off the stone walkway. William growled something to himself before he turned back to Hannah, anger and concern blazing in his eyes. "I'll explain later, but for now you need to let me go." "Then make me a promise," Hannah blurted. William's gaze didn't move as he waited for her answer. She took in a deep breath and looked down at her feet. "Please promise to come back. Please." Hannah didn't look up to see William's face as he responded. A small hint of warmth returned to his voice. "We'll share some coffee and sweets tonight. I promise." Without another word, the man broke free from Hannah's grip and sprinted out of the shop from the kitchen's back door. For a brief moment, Hannah didn't move, her feet cemented to the wooden floorboards. Her instinct screamed to go after William, find out what the commotion was outside, and why it had him so shaken. But the voice in her mind was at war with those instincts. It told her that it could be another Insectid, just like the one Elizabeth became. It could be the Mantis Insectid, killing people in the streets. If she ran toward the disaster like she did last night, she really could die this time. Hannah's hands balled into fists, and she choked out a response to those voices. I can't help everyone if I do nothing. I'll find a way to help. With that, she sprinted out after William, exiting the door just in time to see him round the corner that led to the main street. She stopped herself at the corner of the building and let her eyes take in the scene. A large monster bearing resemblance to the rhinoceros beetle held a large sword and shield in the middle of the street. Standing in front of it was a small Knightess, her armor shattered in various places and her left eye bloodied. Her right hand held up a one-handed sword, while her left arm limply hung from her shoulder. Breathtakingly beautiful blonde hair rolled out from underneath the shattered helmet, with its ends stained in blood. William was only a few steps from the corner, a soldier's face plastered over his own. Knightess, the rhino beetle called, his speech slurred. You are fine. The Knightess offered a weak laugh. Glad my company satisfies. The remark was rewarded with an overhead strike of the Insectid's sword. The Knightess narrowly dodged the strike, but her balance was lost and she crumbled to the floor like a doll. As Hannah felt the urge to leave her hiding spot, a familiar voice shouted something from behind her. When she turned her head, she saw Officer Rachel running toward William, her face a mixture of panic and concern. William, Rachel repeated. William turned and frowned when he saw Hannah hiding behind him, but he ignored her to respond to the officer. When did he appear? Just a minute ago, Rachel reported. She gave an apologetic glance to Hannah and continued. He was trying to pass himself off as a civil guard. We don't know who he is. He changed on his own. It looked like he was already losing himself when we saw him. He got agitated about us visiting you. William used his head to gesture to Hannah. Get her out of here. I'll handle it. Mr. William, Hannah shouted. William let out a heavy sigh and gave her a tired smile. You want to save everyone, right? I'll let you decide how that's done here. What? Officer Rachel drew her sword and stood between Hannah and William. Stay behind me. I'll guarantee your safety. William took several steps forward and called out to the Insectid. That's enough. I'll be your opponent from here. The beetle turned around and offered William a toothy grin. You look fun. You're looking for the Mantis, aren't you? The question had the beetle lower his head in surprise. Mantis? You know where? If you're dead set on fighting the Mantis, then I have a warning for you. Warning? William spread his arms out as if to reach for some invisible item. After a moment, he crossed his wrists under his chin, keeping his palms toward himself. As his wrists touched each other, green lines made of light briefly flashed over his body, taking the shape Hannah recognized as armor. I can't promise you'll live to see tomorrow, but I promise to make tomorrow better for someone else. The beetle took a step back, but his voice was electric with anticipation. You are... With a flick of his wrists, William turned his palms out to the monster. Insectid! As an ocean made from ink consumed William's body, Hannah's mind flashed scenes of the Mantis before her eyes. The moment she first saw him, the few words he exchanged with her, his fight with the Fire Bug Insectid, and even how William responded to her story of the night. She was scared, but something was telling her to trust the mantis that was materializing in front of her. Now in broad daylight, Hannah was able to recognize how light the armor was on this Insectid. She saw the decorative antennae on top of the helmet, the metal hip plates that hung from its belt, and how the two swords that sprouted from its forearms had the veins of a leaf. William was the Mantis Insectid, a truth that offered both hope and despair to Hannah's heart. "Mantis!" the beetle cheered. A childish giggle played through clenched teeth. "I feel it! Insectid champion!" The mantis relaxed his stance and turned his head toward Hannah and Officer Rachel. "Hannah, let me know when you've decided. Only one of us can live after this." "What?" Hannah shouted in disbelief. "Can't you save him?" The beetle Insectid let out an angry roar. "Do not ignore me, champion. You are mine!" The oversized man swung his sword in an overhead strike. Without taking his eyes off of Hannah, the mantis sidestepped the attack, entering the space beneath the beetle's chin as if invited to do so. The blunt sword shattered the road's cobblestone surface, causing loose stone to rain around the two combatants. As the beetle started to pull his sword out from the ground, the mantis ducked into the beetle's tower shield. "You are fast, but I am strong. Fight me!" The giant pulled his shield in, clearly hoping to trap the mantis inside. Instead, the mantis leapt up into the air, practically flying over the beetle's head before landing gracefully behind him. "What are you doing?" Hannah shouted. In response, the mantis merely glanced back at her briefly before turning to the Knightess he had landed next to. He said something to the woman before he picked her up from the ground, leapt high into the air, and landed in front of Officer Rachel. He set the unconscious Knightess down on the ground as he spoke. "She's hurt badly, but she'll be okay with some first aid and stitches. Make sure Knightess Katherine is notified of her condition." Hannah couldn't miss Rachel's eyes growing as wide as dinner plates. "How did you?" Before the officer could finish her question, he leapt back into the street to stand in front of the beetle Insectid. He didn't take up a fighting stance, however. Instead, he stood casually, staring up at his foe as if observing a constellation. "Fast and jumpy. You are like a bug." "You seem more competent than the others," the mantis observed. "Who sent you?" "Who? Do not know." The beetle pushed his lips together in thought. "I wanted power." "My power?" His mouth popped open in realization. "To kill you! I said to kill you." "So you know who made you an Insectid?" "Do I? Why?" "If I can stop fake Insectids like you from being created, the Empire would be a better place for everyone." The beetle's rage was more visible than the afternoon sun. "Fake? I am not fake. I am champion. You are the fake." The tower shield was thrust forward, striking the mantis. The green Insectid was sent rolling on the ground for several feet before he came to a stop. After a moment, he slowly rose to his feet, but maintained his casual stance. "Mr. William, why aren't you fighting?" Hannah shouted. The mantis's head turned. "You asked if fighting was so easy. Why couldn't I save Elizabeth? You said you wanted to save everyone. This fight will be my answer to you." A horizontal strike from the beetle's blunt sword struck William in the side, sending him flying to the other side of the street, only to come to a stop when he collided with a brick building. Once more, he rose to his feet, but kept his arms down. "I don't have the power to free people from being Insectids. If I let Insectids like him or Elizabeth live, they will kill people, starting with those they love, before moving on to those they're less familiar with." Hannah thought about how Elizabeth's Insectid burned down the orphanage. killing her other caretakers and children before moving on to kill her neighbors. She closed her eyes and shook her head. No, that's not it. Another heavy crashing sound erupted. When Hannah opened her eyes, she saw a hole in the building across the way. After brushing some bricks off his body, the mantis rose again and pointed at Hannah. If I'm saved, I'll be creating more Insectid victims. The friends and families will live, but those Insectids will die. If he's saved, people unrelated to him will die. He will keep killing until someone else kills him. Who do you want to save, Hannah?
Mr. William, this isn't fair.
The beetle thrust his sword toward the mantis, but was parried by an upward strike. The parry caused the large sword to slam into the ceiling, bringing the upper portion of the building crumbling down in a mess of mortar clouds and loose bricks. From that mess, the mantis leapt back out into the street, his armor battered from the impacts it suffered and the colors dulled from the dust. The mantis kept his gaze on the beetle once he stood tall. The world is unfair, Hannah. Do you think the Arrow Kingdom had a choice between fighting the Bastion army or standing down? When Hannah didn't respond, the mantis continued. Did you think you had a choice between getting a job or letting Miss Elizabeth die? Do you think people get to choose between fighting the Insectids or watching others die? Many people have to choose between impossible and unfair. If you think you don't have to because you're not an adult yet, then you truly are a child. William's harsh words were unlike anything Hannah had heard or even expected of the man. When she first met him, he was lifeless and only came alive while working on coffee. When she opened up to him last night, he was a compassionate man who promised to help her if she let him. Even just a few minutes ago, he was a philosophical man who gently narrowed down her thoughts with simple questions. Now he was forcing her to recognize her flawed ideals just after declaring them. Hannah thought back on the life Miss Elizabeth spoke fondly of, the neighbors who tried to protect her, and the stories of the Arrow Kingdom's civilians rising up to fight the Bastion army. William was right. They all had a choice they didn't want to make, but they had to make it. If they didn't, the outcome they likely hated more would have come to fruition. Either way, they had to live with the decision they made. Hannah had to live with whatever decision she made here. It was then that she realized why her instincts told her to trust the mantis, to trust William. It was because he had her best interests at heart. He didn't have to take her in when the orphanage burned down. He didn't have to listen to her rants, and he didn't even need to illuminate her naivety now. He was just helping her. She wasn't sure why he wanted to help her, but if he was going to put in the effort, she was going to let him try.
Mantis, take him down. Save the people of the Empire from the Insectids.
Hannah's voice was an embarrassingly childish declaration of her decision, but she knew that if she didn't choose, the choice would be made for her. Shortly after the declaration was made, the beetle marched out from the collapsed building and roared at the mantis. Stop running! Fight! Fight me, champion! The mantis raised his fist to eye level, the blades reflecting the afternoon sun with a green shine. I don't like fighting, but if I'm going to stop you, I'll fight. The beetle charged forward, raising a sword over his head and keeping his shield forward. The mantis charged forward as well, but his movements were more akin to a soaring arrow than the bear-like movements of the beetle. As the large sword came down, the mantis came to an abrupt halt and threw both of his arms up, successfully parrying the attack. As the large monster stumbled back, he attempted to keep his shield over his torso. Before he regained his balance, though, Hannah saw William cross his wrists in front of his face, keeping his palms facing out to his sides. The mantis eyes on his helmet shared the bright glow of neon green that his blades were practically dripping with. As the mantis lowered his stance and spread his arms out, the beetle regained its balance. You cannot hurt me, the beetle shouted, his confidence quickly melting like ice in the summer heat. I will block it! The mantis said nothing and leapt forward. He spun in the air and landed a kick to the tower shield's side, sending it and the beetle's left arm flying out of the way. As the giant let out an incoherent set of final words, the mantis landed with a crouch and leapt once more, disappearing into the Insectid's body. A more terrified and pained screech escaped from the once boastful monster for several long seconds. From the sounds the monster was making, it was as if he was being cut up from the inside, the mantis ripping through bone, muscle, flesh, and soul. Before the screams could drive Hannah insane, the mantis leapt out from the other side of the defeated Insectid, landing onto the cobblestone street with his arms crossed in front of him. A moment later, the giant was petrified in stone, his weapons and armor losing their saturation to dull grays.
"Mr. William,"
Hannah called out, her voice both apologetic and relieved. The mantis slowly rose and looked to the sky. The armor's color faded to stone gray before dissolving into dust that was carried away by the wind. He turned around, offered Hannah a rare smile, and collapsed. When Katherine arrived at the Market District's Combat Medical Center, often shortened to CMC, she saw Officer Rachel waiting for her outside of Julia's room. She jogged over to the officer, who saluted her as she approached.
"How is she?"
Katherine asked.
"She's going to make it,"
Rachel assured the Knightess.
"She's unconscious, but the doctor said she just had some cuts and bruises that'll heal over time. Worst case scenario, she'll have a few scars to brag about."
"Scars? What happened? All I was told was that she got caught fighting an Insectid." Rachel hesitated for a moment, her lips curling to the taste of lemon.
"A new Insectid appeared on Exchange Boulevard. This one was bigger than any we had ever seen. Knightess Jewel held it off while I evacuated the area under her orders."
Katherine's face twisted in rage. It wasn't directed at the officer, but herself. Not only did she let the fake civil guard leave without interrogating his real intentions, but she allowed Princess Julia to talk her out of being at her side at all times. If Katherine had been there, Julia would have been the one to evacuate the citizens, and Katherine, at worst, would be in that hospital bed. As a knightess, she was a valuable yet expendable pawn for the Empire. With Julia being named the heiress of the Empire, the princess couldn't afford to put her life at risk like she did that day.
"Is she awake?"
Katherine asked.
"She was. She fell asleep after she said."
Rachel appeared to have swallowed another lemon.
"What is it, officer?" "The Knightess also encountered the Mantis Insectid in that fight. She doesn't recall it well, but she said it spoke to her."
"Just like with Hannah. What did it say to her?"
"It doesn't make sense to me, but she says you might understand."
"Spit it out, officer."
"It said, 'Sorry about that day.' Do you know what it means?"
The furnace of fury in Katherine's chest erupted into a blaze as a series of dormant memories flooded her mind all at once. A fist slammed into the wall beside the officer's head, startling the nearby CMC staff. When Katherine pulled her gloved fist away, she revealed a hole had been punched through the wooden surface. "Head to the civil guard post," Katherine said, enunciating each word through gritted teeth. "Have Lieutenant Justin prepare a list of the best fighters in your district." The officer nodded and offered a shaky salute.
"I'll get right on it, ma'am."
As Rachel sprinted down the hallway, Katherine allowed herself to slump into the bench across from Julia's medical room. "After 17 years, you finally revealed yourself. It's been a long time coming."